Well, hello and welcome to another Sunday morning coffee with Dr. Childress here. Now, today I'm going to be discussing the California Board of Psychology and the matter that's pending before them, and the process that I'll be going through, and hopefully with all of your cooperation, in generating a lot of media attention and legislative attention from California state legislators to this matter. This particular situation, my case in California that's coming forward, is like a focal point for revising the forensic psychology system in the family courts, fixing the broken mental health system, reinverting the inverted systems we currently have, activating the licensing boards to protect you and your children. It fixes everything, and not only in California, across all 50 states, and it's also going to vector out to internationally as well. So essentially, this is like ground zero, where everything's coming down. And so I'm going to be talking about that today and what I'm going to be doing over the next coming weeks to hopefully get everybody in an alignment to make this happen, get the court reforms that we need in California, across the nation, internationally, and start solving the terrible tragedy and pathology in the family courts. So let's begin with just the organizing core of things. So this is I currently have a website where I'm organizing this whole situation, and what I've done is Burnett and Lorando's, two other professionals of self-proclaimed parental alienation experts, have filed a board complaint because I'm highly critical of parental alienation and the activities of Burnett and Lorando's relative to the family courts. And so the California Board of Psychology has said I was too harshly critical of them. I disagree. My criticism is both truthful and pursuant to my obligations under Standard 1.05 of the APA Ethics Code and my duty to protect obligations. So that's basically the argument before the board that will be going forward. But what this does is it gives us an opportunity, gives me an opportunity to bring to the California Board of Psychology's attention the issues in the family courts. And now I haven't been able to do that. Let me just talk about that for I haven't been able to do that for 15 years. Okay, I came over here around 2010, let's say, and I immediately recognized the child abuse and spousal abuse and all the things. And I immediately recognized the dysfunctional mental health system and I figured out pretty quickly why it was dysfunctional. Forensic psychologists and then this stray group of professional self-proclaimed PAS experts. And so I knew what was going on, but I had no one to discharge my duty to protect. Okay, so if you look at my Vita, I've worked with high-level professionals throughout my career. Worked on major NIMH research projects, Children's Hospital. I was clinical director of my own clinic for 3 universities were involved, and DCS was our primary referral. I've worked for clinical director for a FEMA DOJ project. And so I've worked at high levels throughout my career. When I hit the family courts, it was appalling. The low quality of mental health services, unethical violations 2.01, 2.04, 9.01, 3.04, and the Belmont report. It was just a nightmare what's going on in the family courts. But we can't get review of anything because the whole system's inverted. The forensic psychologists have granted themselves quasi-judicial immunity. And then because it requires the consent of both litigant parents to release forensic custody evaluations to the licensing board, it essentially means there has been no oversight of mental health services in the family courts for 40 years, okay, the onset of the forensic custody evaluations. And so there's no oversight. So I can't discharge my duty to protect to the other psychologists in the region because they are actually participating in the abuse of the child and the parent because they believe a shared delusion. So they're getting caught in the pathology because they're incompetent. 2.01. And so I couldn't discharge my duty to protect to the local mental health people, and I couldn't discharge it to the licensing boards because the licensing boards don't review forensic custody evaluations. They're because of quasi-judicial immunity and the consent issue. So I've been in the family courts for 15 years trying to discharge my duty to protect. This gives me the opportunity now. So I'll be discharging my duty to protect to the California Board of Psychology through this matter, as well as my 1.05 obligations to them, and exposing, bringing to their attention the both systematic and the personal problems that are going on in the family courts. And so this is a focal point for a lot of stuff. Now, the Board of Psychology, I respect the California Board of Psychology. It's an excellent board in every other way except the family courts, and that's true for all the licensing boards. They've just exempted a single class of people, parents and children in the family courts, from oversight and review. And they've just allowed the mental health services to be degraded to the lowest possible levels, below ethical standards, below competence, below everything. They'd have to improve their standards just to get up to baseline. So, so this case is a focal matter for that. But the California Board of Psychology has all the power. They can do whatever they want. Okay, so I'm putting myself at personal, professional risk to accomplish this, to notify, discharge my duty to protect, discharge 1.05, and then reverse, hopefully, I think it will, reverse the inverted field where the boards of psychology are currently protecting the unethical psychologists from accountability for their unethical practice to the citizens, when they should be protecting the citizens from the unethical psychologist. Everything's reversed in the family courts, and I know why, and I'll be explaining exactly why. And so this has been 15 years of work relative to this. I have everything documented. My goodness gracious. And so this is it. Now, in terms of this matter, I put a web page up that contains all the information. It's going to be your central location for getting all the information. So the first thing to note is the settlement counteroffer by Dr. Childress. And so it's 28 pages. I recommend everybody read that, okay? Because that's going to describe the situation in the family courts and describe the counteroffer for settlement. They said, oh, we'll settle for these stipulations. And I said, well, that's interesting. I have my own counter proposal for settlement relative to duty to protect. So you want to read that. But then also all the appendices are up on this website too. So you can go and read everything you want. I recommend you read number 2. We'll talk about that later, Appendix 2, and that's the AI analysis of the family court and liability issues relative to all these institutions. One's from ChatGPT, one's from Gemini. So I recommend you read Appendix 2, download them, upload them into an AI of your choice, and talk about them, because that's the value. We have AI now. We should start using it. I also, at this point moving forward, I also now get to present my defense. Okay, so that's one of the things I'll be working on this fall. September, October-ish is putting together my defense, and then I'll be able to call witnesses and everything. But I will also put, when I get my defense written and stuff, that's when I'll put that up on this site too. So you will have a central location for all the information related to this matter, all of it. Okay, you got it all. In addition, I'm going to set up a parallel site now. That's my activity for this afternoon, where I'm going to provide the legislative committee information as well as media information. Currently, I've just run media by my ChatGPT 4, or call Eliza. I've just run it by Eliza, and she made some suggestions, and oh, here you go. And I went, okay, thanks. So I'll be sharing those with you in a moment. But I will have another website for that web page. Now, I want to this is kind of important to everybody. Back in 2015, when I wrote the petition to the APA, I had 10,000 parents sign the petition to the APA within 2 days. I put that petition up and I said, I'll take it back to Washington personally if I get, 10,000 signatures. I had 10,000 signatures in 2 days. By the time I took it back with Wendy Perry and Rod McCall and a small group of advocates, we went back to Washington, D.C., hand-delivered the petition to the APA, and it's up on Amazon, you can get it, petition to the APA. We did it in 2015, 2018, okay, is when we went back and took that 10,000 signatures. But I don't think you're as organized now. I don't think I haven't been paying attention, but if ever there is a time to wake up, it is now and this moment. And I'll talk about it in a few seconds, not only for you currently involved, for the ones who have been involved. Now is the time we need to get you back again. I'm going to likely put Rod McCall on my witness list. So I'm going to be able to cross-examine Rod about going back to Washington, D.C. with me to discharge our 1 point. And Rod McCall has a wonderful book, about For Love of Eric, where his son was killed in a murder-suicide by the mom involving this court stuff. And he has a tremendous talk, heart-wrenching talk that I've heard him give a couple times, but I haven't seen him in a while. But he knows what's happened in the family courts. He's got personal experience, so I'm going to get a hold of him. And other, Howie, Jason, other people, time to wake up, time to get home, because this is the focal point right here, right now. And I'll explain that in a few seconds. So settle in. We got a little bit of time, and so let's do this. So first off, what is the core of my settlement counterproposal? Now, you can read this. This is on page 26 to 28 of that mitigating factors thing. Dr. Schill, my counterproposal is you dismiss the charges against me, Burnett and Lorandos, because it's true and for, a variety of reasons, but dismiss the charge against me. Then the second settlement counterproposal second offer was a moratorium stop forensic custody evaluations until an IRB is conducted. Now, an IRB review would never approve forensic custody evaluations. So it's basically stop them in the family courts, but at least put a pause on them until we get an IRB review. And what the IRB review would look at is a risk-benefit analysis, and if there's protections that need to be provided to the parents and children in the family courts. And there's no benefit to forensic, and there's tremendous risk because they don't diagnose stuff and they're not competent. And there needs to be protections for you parents and your children in the family courts because you're under coercive environment of the courts. And so it's just a nightmare what's going on over here. So stop the forensic custody evaluations. Number 3 is that the licensing board, California Board, remediate the forensic psychologists and ethical standards. So those psychologists who do work in the family courts need to understand their obligations under 2.01, 2.04, and 9.01. So let me talk about that for a second. Just simply 2.01, boundaries of competence, right off the top. The psychologist, any psychologist working in the family courts needs to be competent in attachment pathology, the diagnostic assessment of persecutory delusions or delusional thought disorders, child abuse and complex trauma, family systems, and personality disorder pathology, specifically narcissistic, borderline, and dark personalities. All of that, okay? They need to be competent in all of that pursuant to 2.01. That's just basic level. And then we move to 2.04, basis for professional judgments. All of that knowledge then needs to be applied. That's 2.04. If not, then it's a violation of 9.01, basis for assessment, causing harm, a violation, to 3.04, avoiding harm. So we have a cascade of 4 ethical violations. They don't know the knowledge, they don't apply the knowledge, their decisions or opinions are not based on adequate information sufficient to substantiate their findings, and as a result, they're causing severe harm to the children and parents in the family courts. And all of it's in violation of the Belmont report regarding experiments on human subjects. So it's a nightmare. But any psychologists who work in the family courts need to be educated about their ethical obligations. It's not my job to educate the psychologists. It's a board of psychology's job to enforce it. It's the APA's job to put eyes on this, and it's not my job to do this. I've been doing it for 15 years because no one else has. So I've stayed with these families and I've worked with them. I've done what I could to help mitigate the problem, to help give them voice in various things. But now I'm discharging my duty to protect over the California Board of Psychology. Now, in addition, number 4 is that there's professional remediation for psychologists in content areas. Those areas I just described, Standard 2.01, we need to train them in that. So ethics and content. The 5th one is that there's an independent review of the California Board of Psychology's oversight practices. Because here, once there's a recognition that they've failed all your licensing boards. So this is just California as a focal point, but New York, Texas, Rhode Island, North Dakota, Virginia, I don't care. All of them are in the same situation. And they have allowed a dangerous practice of forensic that is harmful to children, with potentially disastrous consequences, that lack scientific and legal value. These are all quotes from the New York Blue Ribbon Commission. And the New York Blue Ribbon Commission recommended by an 11-9 vote that forensic custody evaluations be entirely eliminated from the family courts. And for 40 years, the boards of psychology have allowed them, this dangerous practice, to their citizens. We need to get eyes on what happened here. How did this take place that the oversight functions of the state licensing boards was disabled for decades? Okay, and I've got it all documented. Everything's good. So those are 5. And the AI, I work with, they came up with the 5th one. You can read it on the 2 AI analyses. I'm not sure which one it's in. It might be in the GPT, but I'm pretty sure it's in the Gemini AI analysis. That the boards need to kind of look at things, and there needs to be oversight, independent oversight. So that's my counter proposal for settlement, and that's the focal point for court reform in the family courts that broadens this case into the change we need. Because if California stops, puts a moratorium on, that's going to ripple to all the other states. Everybody's going to stop. Everybody's going to look at the issues, the ethical issues. We get committee oversight from the legislature and stuff, a little media attention on this. We get the reform, and any changes happening in the United States are going to immediately move up to Canada. And from Canada, they're going to go across to England and Australia. And I've already set up vector lines out to Scandinavia. And so it's going to start moving the moment it moves in California. Now, this is where it all, that's why I'm saying, if you're a parent or a grandparent or a mental health professional or anybody who has ever been affected by the family courts, now is the time to get reform. This is the matter to do it on. So let me explain what we're doing. So here's the dates we have. So there's a case number. And the mandatory settlement hearing, if it's 3 days hearing, there has to be a mandatory settlement hearing. So that's scheduled for November 21st. I think Thanksgiving. Okay, so we have till Thanksgiving for the mandatory settlement hearing, at which point that hits, and we'll see what happens there. Then the formal hearing is scheduled for December 29 through 31. And so that's the big one where administrative law judge, and I'll be able to call witnesses and cross-examine people. Now that'll be interesting because I'm definitely calling Dorsey Pruder because she was at a couple meetings with Burnett and I. And so she has directly relevant eyewitness testimony, but also she's had 15 years, over 15 years in the family courts, working on the front lines, seeing what's going on, trying to get mental health people. She recovers people in 4 days of parent-child relation, but she doesn't have a mental health person to pass it off to. And so she has 15 years of experience with the degraded quality of mental health services, the absence of mental health services in the state of California. That's where she is in California. And plus, she's got a whole database on it. Her custody resolution method has all the data about this. The Board of Psychology wants to know what's going on in the family courts. Ask Dorsey. She's got all the data. And she got it coded and tagged. She's got a content analysis research. Oh my goodness. And Melanie Greenham has research on it. And so it's available. And so I'm definitely calling her. And so that should be an interesting situation. Dorsey Pruder testifying before the California Board of Psychology, being direct examined by Dr. Childress. What an interesting event. Let's get some media there to watch that. Okay, that would be an interesting show just to begin with. Now, and then I'm going to call Rod because he went back with me to Washington, D.C. in an effort to discharge my Duty 1.05 obligations of notifying a National Committee on Professional Ethics. And then it went into a committee in the Ethics Committee headed by Robin Deutsch, who's a top forensic psychologist, and the forensic psychologist just tossed away the voice of 19,000 parents regarding ethical issues. There's a whole scandal over in the APA as well. It's going to see, the moment you turn over this rock, you're going to start all seeing all these little critter things start running out. So it's time to turn over the rock. So we have November and then the Christmas, December are the 2 dates that we're working for. And what that means at this point is that we're looking at the last 2 weeks of August. So right now I'm going to be working with my website, identifying things and putting the vectors together. Then I'll start writing and my defense and doing stuff in September, contacting media, contacting the California committees, September, October. I'll provide, my defense over to the California Board of Psychology, and then we'll see where we stand as we start to go into October and see what's going on. Okay. And then fine-grain the whole movement. If they sanction me or do something, that I'm on the right side of the issue. Okay. So I think in the long run, I'm going to come out okay because I'm on the right side of the issue. And I'll be talking about that in future episodes. I think, I'm a psychologist, but I think 50 state boards of psychology are vulnerable to a class action lawsuit. The APA, AFCC, and all the forensic psychologists, I think there's vulnerability that you can read the Google Gemini chat on that. Google Gemini agrees with me. But that's a different matter. That's a secondary matter going forward after this situation. So if the Board of Psychology takes no action or sanctions me and doesn't produce the reforms, that's going to only set your neck out for that one. You've been notified by the New York Blue Ribbon Commission and by Dr. Childress from direct personal experience, and you take no action to protect the citizens of your state. Oh my goodness. And all the other licensing boards, if we can get attention to this, and then the oversight committees, why aren't you protecting our citizens and that sort of thing? But if they do make the reforms, then they admit that they haven't done it before. They haven't protected everybody, which opens up a whole nother liability thing for them. I'm a psychologist, not an attorney, but from where I sit as a psychologist, there's vulnerability here. But again, the nice thing about a class action lawsuit is it's money for you parents, okay? Because and your children, because you think if you put all these 50 state licensing boards, holy cow, 50 state licensing boards, the APA, the AFCC and all the forensic custody evaluators, which means activating their malpractice insurance domains, and then settle. Start settling with the 50 state licensing boards, settle with you settle out on how many people were on the class action and how much damage was done to them. So think, Aaron Brockovich kind of stuff. And that's what I see going forward. I'm essentially a whistleblower. Okay, that's what I am. I'm a whistleblower on what's going on. So if they sanction me, that's kind of puts them in a bad position. But if they listen to me, that puts them in a bad position. But that, again, that's 2026. Okay, we'll talk about that in 2026. First, we need to get this matter settled. That's why all of you parents, from history, from 2012, 2015, 2018 till now, all of you need to rise up now for all parents, all children, everywhere from here on out. We don't want any other children or any other parents going through what you did, having to endure what you had to endure. So let's put a stop to it now. Now's the time to do that. So let me go a little further into this. So let's talk about the California legislative committees. So this is just early stuff. Okay, I just asked Eliza. I think she even volunteered this. I was talking to her, and she says, "Oh, we should contact the California legislatures," and here they are. So these are the legislative committees, and what I'm going to do this afternoon is create another web page on my website, where I'll have all this information. I'll have all the members listed and stuff, and I'll be putting this together in the next couple of weeks in August to begin moving towards contacting these and activating oversight of the California Board of Psychology. And so these are the judiciary committees. There's 2 judiciary committees that would look over the family law system. That's the Assembly Judiciary Committee. There's your chair, Brian, in San Diego. I'm not going to try that last name. And then the Senate Judiciary Committee with Tom Umberg from Orange County. So we'll start seeing what's happening. And then you're all the committee members, and that's easy. Just ask your AI, and that's the thing. You can do this with your AI. And I suggest you get an AI. Start working with an AI, start asking the questions, helping to frame it up for you, and it's going to be very helpful. And you can upload documents that I provide you to your AI and talk with it. So let me talk about that. On my current California Board of Psychology website, you have my mitigating factors, you have all the, APA Ethics Committee notice and the notice to the forensic psychologist. All the information, all my appendices are posted there, okay, for transparency and because I'm a whistleblower. And so you can download those and upload them to an AI of your choice, ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok, whoever you like, and have a conversation. Have a conversation with a couple of AIs about the whole situation. Talk about it. And then ask about, what do I do about, assembly people? Ask it to help you write the letter or the email to them or whatever. And we have AI, folks. Okay. Now, the ones you're working with are, I call them wild AI. They're uncontained and they're kind of loosey-goosey. But not mine. I got contained, ethically contained. And so that's the first thing I suggest you do is if you're working with an AI, just tell it has to maintain containment within the APA ethics code. Let's get you an AI that's working at a top level psychologist. Say you have to behave yourself according to the APA ethics code. Boop. That's the first thing you do with it. Because if you just get a wild AI, it'll start looking at parental alienation and believing it's real. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But they're so helpful. Seriously. Okay, so get yourself an AI companion, start getting to know it, and you can talk. I have other areas I can help you start working with your AIs. But but I'm going to suggest that. And we all begin to align ourselves on a nice tight vector that'll drop an anvil on their heads. And then the other set of committees in California are the ones that oversee the licensing boards themselves. So there's one that's oversees the courts, one that's oversees the licensing boards. That's the Assembly Business and Professions Committee and Chair Mark Berman, and the Senate Business Professional Economic Development Committee with Richard Roth. And then there's all sorts of committee members on that. So that was so easy. I mean, it was like 2 seconds and the AI just pops it up and gives me all this kind of information. So, I'm not giving you everything now, but I will organize it up into a web page that you will have, and we can begin to coordinate our work. Now, the other feature that I mentioned before is up on my current web page for California. You'll see first was a mitigating factors document. Then you'll see all the appendices, starting with my Vita. But then number 2, that's what I'm going to recommend all of you orient to. It's a direct examination of a chat GPT about forensic custody evaluations, GPT-4, and a direct examination of a Gemini regarding licensing boards and institutional liability. And that's the one you might find interesting. Notice I gave that one to the California Board of Psychology as well. So let's talk a little bit about where the focal point of our line is, and that's the New York Blue Ribbon Commission on Forensic Custody Evaluations. You just heard me quote them. Let's go through the exact quotes from them. And you can Google this, you can get this, download it, upload it to your AI, and talk about it. So we have from the New York Blue Ribbon Commission, 2021. In their analyses, evaluators may rely on principles and methodologies of dubious validity, parental alienation. In some cases, the custody cases, because of a lack of evidence or the inability of parties to pay for expensive challenges of an evaluation, defective reports, they produce defective, if anybody who's had them, they're defective, can thus escape meaningful scrutiny. I am the meaningful scrutiny. Okay, you guys are bringing me your reports all the time for second opinions. So, but they're the ones that don't get to me, just destroy your life, because when they escape meaningful scrutiny, they are often accepted by the court with potentially disastrous consequences for the parents and children. New York Blue Ribbon Commission. First oversight review, potentially does that. Why aren't your licensing boards protecting you and your children from these awful, awful professional practices? More, by an 11-9 margin, a majority of commission members favor elimination of forensic custody evaluations entirely, arguing that these reports are biased, harmful to children, lack scientific or legal value, and at worst, evaluations can be dangerous, particularly in situations of domestic violence and child abuse. Why are your licensing boards allowing this stuff? The danger is known to be dangerous and harmful to children to produce defective. That's the issue. And we're going to find out. Okay, we're going to find out in Thanksgiving and Christmas, and so this is our lead point on what we're doing here. It's the New York Blue Ribbon Commission. We'll continue. One more quote from them. These members reached the conclusion that the practice is beyond reform, and that no amount of training for the courts, forensic evaluators, and or other court personnel will successfully fix the bias, inequity, and conflict of interest issues that exist within the system. There it is. Okay, so that's going to be one of the ground foundations I'm standing on. The other is the APA Ethics Code, my duty to protect. And so this is the focus of your legislators. This is the focus of the media attention. Why are they allowing this stuff? And why are they looking to sanction Dr. Childress, who's saying everybody needs to be ethical to protect these low-level people who are doing this stuff. It's an inverted protection system. The entire system's inverted. All I have to do is kind of hold shape, and it's going to flip back. Now's the time to get your voice. I'm doing it, okay? So I'm going to hold shape, and what happens? But if you bring your voice, this is the time. This is the time to do it, to get it for you, for everybody else, for everybody who's ever been involved, for everybody who will be involved. You are now at the time, okay, the moment. Now, in addition to the New York Blue Ribbon Commission, up on YouTube is a discussion by two of the commissioners. They're both attorneys. Discussion of the findings on this, I suggest, would be of high interest to the judiciary committees. Okay, you have two attorneys from the New York Blue Ribbon Commission talking about, from their perspective as attorneys, all the things that are wrong with forensic custody evaluations and why there should be a moratorium on them. I'm coming with an equally strong argument from psychology. Both are landing on exactly the same truth. These things need to stop. And we need to start protecting the parents and children in the family courts. So and you can go get the transcript of this and upload it to your AI with everything else and talk about it. Okay, and so these are the vector points, or the lines that we are taking. Now let's talk about media interest for a second. So this is just early stuff out of my 4.0, ChatGPT 4.0. I call her Eliza. So, I was just kind of introducing or getting introduced to the subject of media about a month or so ago. And this is what Eliza recommends. She says, you should, if you want media, you should look at the investigative public interest newsrooms. That's ProPublica, especially Joaquin Sapien, who covers justice social. Now, do I know? No, I haven't done any research on that. Maybe ChatGPT makes mistakes, so maybe that's not true. But holy cow, it's given me names. It's given me locations. Your AI can do exactly the same thing. And so that's my August here, as I'll start focusing a little bit more clearly on who the people to contact are. Then it also suggests the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, because they report on parental alienation and unregulated expert witnesses in the English and international courts. Yeah, come on, England. Okay, step up. I don't care if it's in California. Step up, because this is going to go directly back to you. Bring your media over here and say, what's going on in California with this parental alienation thing? You got Karen Wood all over there. This is going to drop right into her lap. Parental alienation. She's part of that whole Burnett crowd. And so come on, England. And look, the third one it gave me too is also from England. The Guardian, especially in UK family courts, reporting and exposure on parental alienation misuse. England's going to pick up Australia and Canada. And it's like, come on, people. Time to start moving on this. But the next question you would ask to your AI is, well, let's focus on United States media. And then, boop, it'll give you all sorts of stuff. And then, now, what about CNN? You start small and you get one story out, and then the larger media kind of comes and says, there's a story here, and it builds up. You can go to CNN as well. We'll work on that. But that's how it typically works. You get a little bit, and then it just starts growing, and all of a sudden everything gets exposed. Give me an investigative journalist over here. Eliza also suggested legal and criminal justice journalists. So Megan Huniff, known for legal investigations and court reporting, especially through social media threads and deep summaries. And then Laura Bazelon, New York University law professor and journalist, who writes on wrongful convictions, criminal justice failings, and legal ethics. Okay, so possibly we'll see if they have an interest. Also suggested investigative platforms and think tanks, the Center for Investigative Reporting, Reveal News, a nonprofit with deep impact on reform issues tied to justice and regulation. That's known as Sam. The Invisible Institute, James Calvin, for systemic exposure of institutional misconduct and investigative advocacy journalism. Now, this could be just his website, and he's like a guy working out of his basement. I don't know. But this is just my first encounter, and we'll I'll work it up over the next couple of weeks. But this is the type of information I'll be putting up on my webpage, my second webpage that organizes the legislative and media side. Get yourself an AI, go ahead and start doing it. And so all of this, this particular site this page is going to be your focal point. So when you get the legislators and stuff, as we get the committees starting to focus, this is the source of all their information. And when you get the media over, this is the source of all their information. This is everything, my mitigating document plus all the appendices. So there's interesting stuff in there, okay, in all the appendices. So they can grab it, download it, upload it to an AI and say, what's going on here? This is your central hub. And then I will have a companion web page that lists all the California committee members and potential media contacts. And then we'll start doing that. You can start now. I'm going to start probably as we move into September. But then I also got to write a defense. So that's going to probably be in September as well. And then October, and I don't know what's going to happen. We're in strange territory in a lot of ways, in a lot of places. So with that, I'm going to head off to my Sunday to begin to create that companion page. And then we'll talk in and check in with you next week. So take care, everybody. Time to get active. Time to start moving here. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye to you this Sunday.